Redevelopment Authority Board for June 25th. The roll call vote, or excuse me, roll call on the attendance,
You want me to do a roll call for the minutes? Okay.
or for the attendance, I guess.
Oh, for the attendance, okay. Trustee Brasted?
Here.
Trustee Reinert?
Here.
Trustee Gamache?
Here.
Trustee Schulte?
Here.
Trustee Jepson?
Here.
Trustee Meisner?
Here.
And we're all here. Approval of minutes from May 28th. Do I have a motion?
So
Moved by trustee Schulte, seconded by trustee Brasted. Any changes? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, it's approved. We'll move down to chair's remarks. I don't have any. We'll move down into the ACHRA Management Committee report for June 11th, 2024. Karen?
Mr. Chair, our first item that requires action is our approval of the 4 senior housing budgets. I do have Shane here from Ellers who will do a very quick overview. We've worked very hard on these budgets to keep them, the rents as affordable as possible. I'll just turn it over to Shane and let him give you the full update.
Welcome, Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and trustees. As Ms. Skepper mentioned, we've got the 4 senior housing budgets for consideration today. At a very high level, the HRA Management Committee, Great Lakes Management, and Ellers has reviewed a 3% rent increase that would be put in place as each tenant renews their leases in each of the projects. And we're also recommending a 10% increase in parking rent. But other than that, it's a pretty high-level overview, which I'll go through each of the projects very briefly. We've got the Willows in Ham Lake, Savannah Oaks in Ramsey, Chauncey Barrett Gardens in Centerville, and the Oaks of Lake George in Oak Grove. These were all developed in the time period between '96 and 2005 to fill a need for senior housing in Anoka County. There was debt sold and backed, in most cases, by the county's GO, and in Ham Lake, the city GO was pledged on that project. They've all been around for a while, and they're starting to see a need for capital improvements, and to varying degrees, the project revenues themselves, and in some cases, depending on the project, the HRA levy has been used to supplement that, and the needs for capital improvements have been increasing because the buildings are getting a bit older now. Again, the rent increases are in line with the 3.2% COLA increase that is projected, and the Senior Citizens League currently estimates that the 2025 increase for Social Security will be about 2.86. So it's right in line with what we're seeing for cost of living increases in other aspects of people's lives. We do a CoStar report to benchmark the rents as it relates to 1-bedroom rents in the rest of the county. And for most cases, we're below that average rent. The one that is above is the Oaks of Lake George, but just by a smidge. And the CoStar data is, while it's the best data that we have out there to benchmark this, outside of doing a full rent study, it is a little bit, can be a little bit quirky at times. So the point is that we're generally at or below the average rents for 1-bedrooms in the community, and what that translates to is about 50% of the area median income for Anoka County. So that's where the rents land on all of these projects. Operating costs in all the budgets are up based on last year's operating costs, basically for 2 reasons. The first one is that last year was a very mild winter, and so we're resetting all those utility costs to what in theory would be an average winter. And so based on 2024, we're thinking those utility costs are gonna come up a bit. The only other thing that's really a change across the board is that there's an exercise program for the seniors that is being offered. That's about $4,800 a year in all the projects, and so that adds a little bit of operating cost as well. And so the operating costs are going up at about 6.1 to 7.5%. With rent going up 3%. Obviously, rent is a larger portion of the pie, and so that does account for that operating cost increase. And we'll see what next year looks like after the winter, and as we start to settle in post-COVID with costs and inflation and things like that. Again, the capital improvement budgets in detail are included in the packet. These are older units, and Great Lakes Management, along with Anoka County staff, and reviewed by Ellers, go through all those capital improvements in detail, from carpet replacement to roof replacement to elevator replacement and so on, and try to project that out in the most accurate way that we can today. The biggest issue that you have coming up in these projects is the Chauncey Barrett Gardens project. That one, with a combination of the cash flow coming out of the project naturally and the HRA levy in that community, will not pay for debt service and operating costs by about 2029. And so we would be working and have been working with HRA staff to try to figure out some options. We've laid a few of those out in the memo. Right now, you could subsidize that project with LAHA and SAHA dollars. Those are the dollars that came out of the 2023 legislative session. The debt on that project isn't retired until 2033, although it is callable in 2029, which is about when you run out of money in the HRA levy account to subsidize the project. So there's a potential to restructure the debt or delay some of those capital improvements. But it's a cash flow problem, and the problem isn't huge. We've done a bit of work since we wrote this memo, actually, to figure out, what sort of check would need to be written to solve that problem. But it's not massive, and there's a number of options that we'll present to you to solve that in the future. But it is the project that performs the least best of the projects. So at a high level, the Willows at Ham Lake is about 95 or 97% occupied as projected. Current occupancy is actually 100. That debt is paid off in 2025, which is great, which means that the HRA levy will not be needed to subsidize capital improvements in the very near future here. Savannah Oaks, the debt will be paid off in 2027, and that project will perform well, of course, when that happens, and you can see the detail in the packet. As you move through these, we've talked about Chauncey Barrett Gardens, and the Oaks of Lake George is kind of between Savannah Oaks and Chauncey Barrett as far as performance, where HRA levy funds are needed to help subsidize those capital improvements. All of the revenues from the project don't quite pay for that, but there's plenty of HRA levy funds to do that as time goes on, and so that one doesn't have a cash crunch, but it isn't fully self-supportive on its own. And with that, I know it's a long meeting you have in front of you. I'd be happy to go in any level of detail that you want to, but I'll stop there and ask if there are any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Schulte.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I don't have any questions. The only concern I have is the budget at the Lake George property is based on 97% occupancy. It's currently at 98% occupancy, but its rent is higher than market rate. So occupancy could drop at any point, and the budget's based at 97% occupancy. Now, I get that he explained that it's an anomaly sometimes in the rent to market rate, that the study is an anomaly, and I get that. But at the same time, we've got to be alert to that and pay attention, and maybe we should be basing the budget on 85% occupancy and not 97. Just something to think about. I mean, I'm not on the HRA management, so I probably shouldn't be engaging in this conversation at this point, but just a thought.
Trustee Reiner. Sorry, trustee.
Yeah, I like to operate more conservatively that way too, but we do have, I believe it's a 4-year waiting. I mean, there's hundreds of people that are waiting to get into these facilities, and so with a 98% occupancy rate, that's really one unit empty, and I wouldn't think it would be empty for long. So I don't know, maybe you can comment on that, but I think it's like 400 people are in line waiting to get into these facilities. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, trustees, when we do.
Oh, no, it's a 4-year, I think. 4 years.
4-year waiting list, correct. When we budget for senior housing, whether it's market rate, affordable, any type of housing, you always budget at 97%, figuring you're going to have a turnover, and sure enough, that turnover always occurs right as you're doing your projections. Typically, our buildings are completely full. They all have healthy waiting lists. One of the reasons our rents are higher in Oak Grove is because half of the building looks out over the lake and can command a higher rent than a building that looks over a parking lot or a highway. once we got that building up and running and developed, keeping it occupied has not been a problem.
Mr. Chair,
Trustee.
thank you for the refresher course.
Any other questions? Oh, Trustee Breaston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Curious how Chauncey Barrett is in the position in a couple years. How did it end up on that track?
Mr. Chair, trustees, Chauncey Barrett has presented us with challenges periodically since it was developed. Originally, we developed a 12-unit property, which was really hard to cash flow. When we did the Oaks of Lake George, we did a second building at Chauncey Barrett, which helped the cash flow greatly. So we solved the problem one time. Again, it's a total of about, less than 50 units. It's one of our older properties, and we had a lot of long-term residents there. As they vacated, we had more turnover in that property than we had had in a long time. There are many ways to solve this. Restructuring debt is an option using Laha Saha. I've got 4 or 5 other strategies. It's just something that we always take a look at this. And 5 years ago, we knew that there was going to be a point in time when there was a shortfall. I think we had it in our budget memos. 5 years was a long time. Now we need to look at those strategies so we can really be prepared. But it's very solvable. We solved the problem before, we'll solve it again.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Reiner. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Meisner. Any other discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote.
Trustee Reiner.
Aye.
Trustee Gamache.
Aye.
Trustee Schulte.
Aye.
Trustee Jepson.
Aye.
Trustee Meisner.
Aye.
Trustee Breasted.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Item number 2.
Mr. Chair, item number 2 is approval of a contract, C0007373. This is for the Blaine Human Service Building, and it's a lease between Anoka County and the School District 11. It's one of the projects that Corey's been working on to make sure that we're charging the same rent for our space at each of our spots.
Excellent. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Trustee Schulte and second by Trustee Breasted. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Trustee Gamache.
Aye.
Trustee Schulte.
Aye.
Trustee Jepson. Trustee Meisner.
Aye.
Trustee Breasted.
Aye.
Trustee Reiner.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. Item number 3.
Mr. Chair, item number 3 is a amendment to contract C0009330B, which is the Great Lakes Management Agreement. It renews this year. It's for another 2-year period of time. There are always minor adjustments in the fees charged. We're seeing the basic fee increasing at each of the properties on average less than $10 a month, certainly due to inflationary costs.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Trustee Jepson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Meisner. Any discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote.
Trustee Schulte. Trustee Jepson.
Aye.
Trustee Meisner.
Aye.
Trustee Breasted.
Aye.
Trustee Reiner.
Aye.
Trustee Gamache.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. Item number 4.
Mr. Chair, item number 4 is entering into a contract C00, looks like maybe a 0 might be missing, 10899 with Proficient Construction. There was storm damage on the roof at the Oaks of Lake George. Insurance will be covering the cost of replacement.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Trustee Breasted. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Jepson. Any comments, questions? I think that looks good here, C00. Roll call vote.
Trustee Jepson.
Aye.
Trustee Meisner.
Aye.
Trustee Breasted.
Aye.
Trustee Reiner.
Aye.
Trustee Gamache.
Aye.
Trustee Schulte.
And that passes unanimously. Is that it? Now I
Mr.
lost
Chair,
my page.
that is it.
All right. Okay, we'll call this meeting closed. Thank you, everybody. Workshop.
Yeah, so just, we're in 772.